Hi folks, and welcome to this critique from May the 5th, our watercolour session on this subject, which was the Lighthouse on the Isle of Skye of Scotland. And we're going to start with Hilary's painting on the day of the session. My immediate attention goes to that fantastic sky. That's just beautiful. I love the colours here. That's a wonderful playoff of cool and warm here. Some nice warming up at the bottom of the sky area. Good shapes in the buildings and the lighthouse itself. You might want to be a little bit careful with the weight of the cables off the telegraph post. These that just go beyond the post itself. It's okay here. They're absolutely fine this side. Just be a little bit careful with those there. And if you want to sort of remedy this, if an easy fix for this, if you take a small amount of white gouache on the end of your finger straight from the tube and just sort of push it into one or two areas, you could even run it along the length of that line. It will just soften those lines a little bit. But the foreground's great. The wall's fantastic around here. Some nice textures here. I think there's just enough information in the building itself. It's a very good job, Hilary. Yeah, it's good. It's got all the dynamics in the right place here. I like the way you've conveyed the exchange of the wall to the foreground grassy areas. Yeah, it's a good start. Yeah, it's a fine piece of work. Well done, Hilary. Okay, we have Bob's here next. Yeah, I'm trying to sort of ignore the outside bits around here. Just homing in here. Perhaps we can just crop on this a bit. Sorry, just bear with me. There we are. Okay. So this is good, Bob. Like the brooding sky up here. It's a lovely sky. Okay, be careful of these lines here, which I'll show you now what I mean. Just got to be a little bit. It's okay, you know. It is. There's nothing wrong in outlining surfaces, but there's not much exchange between the wall of the building here. If you look at the tonal and color values of the wall of the building, it's exactly the same as the lower part of the sky. So the only thing telling us that there's anything there, of course, are those lines. So I can sort of understand why you gave us lines at the top of the building, but it might be better if you were to use a slightly different tonal value on the building itself, and I would certainly go for something slightly darker than the sky that's immediately behind the lower part of the sky. As I say, you got to be careful with that, because lines on tops of buildings like this, you won't find too many hard lines outlining hard surfaces, because these hard surfaces made of stone and brick, whatever, they actually reflect light, so it's actually quite difficult to see a line like that. It's unusual to see a dark line on top of a surface like that. It's more likely that you would see a light line, like a white slither of paper left at the top of the buildings there, because it would be reflecting the light off the sky. So if you were to go a little bit darker in the building itself, I think that would probably work a little bit better. But the shape's great. I love the I do love that lighthouse itself there. It's a great shape. and overall the shapes are really good. So yeah, so just be a little bit careful, Bob. Perhaps give a little bit more attention, a little bit more thought to the tonal exchange of showing something off, other than using a line to go around everything to say, you know, to delineate each shape. But yeah, good sky, good lighthouse. All in all, really good shapes actually. Yes, give some thought to that, to the tonal exchanges. Okay. So we're moving on to Chris. This is a lovely bright painting. Again, there's a lot of line. I'll have to obviously check my own demonstration piece, looking at some of these. Broken line, it's the use of the dry brush technique, isn't it? Where we use the small point of the point of a small rounded brush with a very glue-like paint mix. But as I say, you've got to be a little bit careful. Although it's really good to use in certain areas, and certainly the tops of walls like this, but only if you've got an exchange of tonal value between, and certainly you have got a tonal exchange down here, Chris, in this. But where the tonal exchange is identical, as in around this area here, from the building to the sky behind, I'd be a little bit careful about putting lines in there. You'd be better off giving us more of this tonal value that you've got here, but perhaps a different color. So whereas you've got a grey blue tonal value down this end of the building, you continue that tonal value up here, but with a warmer color, like it. You've got a little bit of it here and a little bit there. If you had something like that there, then there wouldn't really be so much need for a hard line across the top there. I actually put lines like this on tops of walls, sea walls, but only, I'll show you what I mean exactly here, only if I'm able to keep having kept a white line above the dark line. So it's all about tonal exchange. Let me show you. So I'll grab this little pencil here, and so if you're using dark lines, say along there, then it needs to show also some white line above there, like that. Now of course it's no good me putting white line across here, and but maybe just to break it up a little bit more, but because of the tonal exchange is a little bit close, and it is okay to have some close tonal exchange in areas. That's absolutely fine, but maybe there's just a little bit too much. It's even, you know, through the upright of the lighthouse as well, the tones are very close to what's going on in the background in the sky. So you just got to give that a little bit of thought, and sometimes you can get away with just changing the temperature. So as I say, down here I think this works really well because you've got a cool darker tone down here. Had this area here, let me just sort of show you, had this area here been warmed up slightly, even some way up into the, you've got a bit there actually, up into the lighthouse, that would probably help. But yeah, a lot of dry hard edges in the sky. So that can work, but I just think you need to be a little bit more careful with just how much hard edge you've got around in the sky. You know, clouds are soft objects, there will be a lot of soft edges in clouds, and if you're finding it difficult to make a transition from a dark area like this into a light area with a soft edge, you simply need to be working wet into wet more. So this area, you might have gone down into this area with a really pale wash of something, blue or warm, it doesn't really matter, but before that had a chance to dry out completely, then your darks go in, and then you would have a lot softer edges down here. We do see hard edges in skies, there's no doubt about it, in clouds, in some clouds, but it's lesser rather than more. It's always a little bit rather than most. It's less rather than more. Good shapes. Love the foreground. I think this is a fantastic foreground, and the brightness of this painting I think works really, really well. And again, I'm sort of looking at sort of, you know, mentioning those lines. So just be a bit careful, folks, with the just how heavy we go on some of the lines. I'm always, you know, extolling the virtues of the line and the dry brush technique. Having said that, once you've got it, once you've learnt that technique, like every other technique and every other effect you choose to put into your paintings, it has to be delivered with some control and thought. So perhaps a little bit less on the line work and a little bit less on the hard edges. But overall, I think that's a beautifully bright painting, and the foreground is excellent, absolutely excellent. Okay. On to Claire. Wow, these colours in here. It's very intense, sort of turquoisey, greeny blues here. So there's a lot of paint being used. Good shapes. I think the sky again is possibly a little bit heavy with the blue. I can see the bigger clouds overhead here, which is good. So just be a little bit careful with this edge down here. Just grab a pen a moment. Yeah, if you create an unbroken line from one side of your painting to the other, it does divide things a little bit awkwardly if you're not careful. So it might have been a good idea to have perhaps just grab another color here, find something that's similar to what you've got in your already got in your painting here. You know, if we could just break an area into the we could break out of that hard line that divides this part of the sky to the lower part of the sky. We really do need some sort of slightly softer transitions in our skies, I think. So be a bit careful with that. The building's great. There's a nice solid structure to the building. You could lift a little bit of the strong paint out. So again, you know, the use of a lot of paint is something I'm always saying that we, you know, some of us don't use enough paint. But once you've got hold of an idea, you've then got to sort of rein it in as well sometimes. So you just give a little bit more thought. This would be easily, I think, lifted if we took a large damp brush and perhaps lifted some areas of light. Imagine the light breaking through some of this cloud and perhaps just lifting out some of this, some areas, you know, sort of in around here. Just imagine that light falling about here as you'd expect it to, because it's slightly higher ground here. There's this feeling from the photo that the ground sort of goes up to the top of this building. So you'd expect a little bit more light up there, I think, even though it was contre-jour, it was backlit mostly. But it's nice just to sort of play around with those rules, just to enhance the painting. Because you can imagine this lovely cloud that's up here. Just, you know, if light is bouncing off this cloud as you'd expect it to, because light isn't always about how it breaks through the cloud directly from the sun. It can be off a large cloud like this. It could be bouncing off that and down into this territory here. So and that would break up the darkness of the foreground a little bit. But great solid shapes. I actually really like the colours. I'm a real, you know, I'm a sucker for turquoises and colours like that. Just you know, just be aware of the balance of colours, tones, etc. yeah, it's good. It's good. Let me just tidy that up. And we'll have a look now at Denise's. Okay. Yeah, it's good. There's good shapes in here. Be a little bit careful, perhaps, with the amount of brushwork in the sky. There's a lot of small movement of the brush. You know, you can sort of see it almost dotted. If you can paint your skies with a sweep, with a large brush, you know, 2-3 sweeps, and then any further embellishment, i.e. slightly smaller shapes of clouds, etc., can be then done with just 1 or 2 additional brush marks. So you've got to be really careful in the bigger areas of our paintings, because the sky is always going to be a big area, and a big area calls for large brush marks, a large brush in the first place, and then physically making large brush shapes. So those nice long sweeping strokes. And the sort of same can be said, because it actually works okay in the foreground, this brushwork that you've been using. Trying to grab a pen again here. You know, the smaller textural brush mark in the foreground works absolutely beautifully, as you'd expect it to be. You know, the closer something is to us, the finer that detail will appear, and vice versa. The further something is away, as I say about the sky, the bigger the brush stroke, the fewer the textural marks. And Denise, just be a little look at that. It's rather perfect sort of sculpt out there. It's funny. I mean, that's certainly a shape that I would say, well, that's, could have used that in the sky with a single brush mark. It's that type of sort of bold, you know, there's a committed effort, you know, a real commitment there to keep that shape really simplified, and it does work. But again, I just what I was saying a moment ago about the previous painting, there's such a strong shape there that you'll need to break through lines from time to time. You'll need just a sort of just to break through in places, 1 or 2 places. So just to break that up a little bit. Building's great. The light is great. I love the color temperatures here. Love the sky in the lower area. And everything is in place, you know, everything in proportion, scale. I think you've got all of that absolutely spot on. So just bear in mind a couple of those things that I've brought up on that. So yeah, good. Okay. And now we are looking at Ellie's. Okay. That's an incredibly powerful sky. It looks almost biblical. Foreground, there's a lot of work gone into this, actually. I really like that wall. I really like that wall here. The building does look a little bit like a small village. So I think that's probably because of the amount of different shapes we've applied. Just grab this. If you think about, there's a shape there, there's another shape there, there's a shape there, there's another shape there, there's a shape there, there. If you could try to sort of unify this long building, because it was all part of the Lighthouse building, and we sometimes need to make sure that's what we're conveying. That it was just one building really, in its from one side to the other. It's a good. It's what fascinates me is the foreground, and in particular this wall, and it does work with the sky. So perhaps what we could do, Ellie, is lighten up the lower part of the sky a bit. I think that's such a uh, I think that's such a powerful sky that despite the fact there may be a couple of hard edges, there's what's really nice about it is you have broken through those edges. So, which is exactly what I was saying a moment ago about another painting. It's just nice to see the breaking through of that hard edge in places like that. That's really well done. So yeah, just be a little bit careful. Be a little bit careful just how much we fragment our areas that probably don't need fragmenting quite so much. There's some unity required because the foreground is wonderful. The foreground is absolutely amazing, but in the foreground is a lot of information, a lot of texture, a lot of individual shapes. So we didn't really need to do exactly the same in the building itself. The building was the opportunity to say, well, let's have some flatness, let's have some peace and tranquility somewhere in this painting. And really the building was the building or the sky right at the bottom. So the sky could have been completely barren of any shape, really. But it's a really powerful looking painting. But I'm guessing you did some scraping in this wall here. Whatever you did, keep it up. That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. That wall really does look like it's been hewn out of the natural rock. Yeah, it's good. I like the use of white gouache for the cables too. Obviously cleverly thought about because of the darkness of the sky behind. The dark line wouldn't have registered at all. Yeah, very good indeed. I like that. Okay. This is Gwen's, and just looking at, we've got to have a look at that. The angle on our lighthouse there might be a little bit off the vertical. Yeah, so be a bit careful there, Gwen, with the it may be that you're working at an angle at your painting board. That often is the reason why that occurs. So if you can try and square up to your paper when you're pen's drawing in your verticals. So when you were drawing this out, and you need to sort of push it away from you, or walk away from it, stand back and have a look at things like verticals and horizontals. I wouldn't mind guessing, I could be wrong, but I wouldn't mind guessing that you've worked very close to this over the paper with your arms bent and drawing from the wrist, instead of sort of pushing yourself backwards away from the painting, or pushing the paper away from you just so you can see whether perhaps the verticals are correct or not. So there's a lot of texture in the sky. Sky is really stormy looking, and likewise is the foreground. There's a real sort of there's a real weathered, stormy looking bit of foreground here, which certainly fits in with the leaning of the lighthouse. It really does look like everything's been blown from left to right. So yeah, so some nice solid sort of shapes in the building itself. Just be a little bit careful about again the sort of edges that we delineate here. But yeah, good effort. Good. Okay, John. Great texture in the front. Fantastic texture in the front. The sky and I'll start with the sky here for a moment. We probably did need to break the sky up a little bit, so that we had a break somewhere around here, a nice sort of sort of semi-abstract break to the bottom edge of this sky up here. Imagine something like that with softened edges, of course. I hasten to add, if we were sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Let me just get that back there again. Just put my line back there a second. So if we had something like this as the bottom break, and then we broke through in places like this where the line wasn't too hard, but then that would have left all this bottom area a lot lighter. So and the exchange, we were saying this a moment ago, weren't we, about the building, the exchange of tonal value between the actual building and the immediate sky behind. There has to be a more dynamic exchange there. So so just have a think, John, about how dark perhaps we go in places, or how light we go in how light we keep places. So just clear that off so you can see again what we're dealing with. Yeah, you sort of want to deflatten, if you like, the sort of building itself by making it slightly darker in areas and setting it, making perhaps a little bit more of a visual jump between the building and the sky that it's sitting in front of. There was always a danger now with a hard edge to the foreground like we've got here. There's a line here that's very, very dark, and of course that limits you as to how dark you can go in the building. I fully appreciate that, but I think we could have gone darker. We wouldn't have to necessarily go as dark as the line on the land here in front, or the wall, but we certainly could go darker than what's happening in the sky there. But that's a great foreground, and I like the movement in the sky. There's some great movement in this sky. It just needs perhaps a little more breaking up. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, John. It's good. We have Linda's here. That's interesting. This is very almost designer-like. This has got a strong design element to it. By the very clarity of each shape. Just grab a pen. So, every shape is clearly defined, giving it a strong design dynamic. There's that. There's the wall. Be careful of that wall. I think that wall, this area of dark wall, perhaps would have been better if it had popped out a little bit beyond. There's a coincidence there where the wall in front of the building finishes on exactly the same vertical as the building itself back there. So yeah, just be careful of that. And then of course there's this big negative shape here. I don't mean negative in a negative way. I mean referring it to aesthetically as a negative space, negative shape. I like that, actually. I like that a lot. But it does make the dark shadow shapes a little bit hard of edges. There's not a lot of soft edge in the painting. So I think a lot of the reason why we can produce a painting sometimes and look at it and think, oh, I didn't notice that, I didn't notice that I didn't create any soft edges. And that's usually because we're concentrating on that particular session. We may have had other skills that we're aiming to achieve at the time. And other things, when you're focused on something else, will suffer a little bit for a while. So yeah, so don't worry about that. It happens. It may be that you are looking to create a really strong design, which it certainly looks like you were here. You know, it was all guns on sort of design, strong design, and that's great because it's such a powerful thing, a good design. So please don't think I'm picking that up as a bad thing. I'm not. I'm picking it up. Actually, it's a really good thing. But then if what you've got to then sort of remember, maybe make a note of, actually on the back of this painting, grab a pen and say things like, yep, you know, really pleased with the strong design. However, you know, perhaps I could have given more attention to some softer edges in places. But it's powerful. It's strong. The lighthouse probably a bit small, given that most, you know, when we're dealing with lighthouses, it's always a sort of it's customary, if you like, or an expectation of the viewer to say, oh, it's a lighthouse. You know, whoops, that's a very wobbly line of mine there. But you'd probably want to play, given how big the building is here, just how big and deep that is. I think the lighthouse in this painting should have been about this big. So just give some thought to a couple of those things I've just mentioned, Linda. But honestly, it's good. It is very good. It's great to see that confidence in shape making. Okay. We have Ron. Okay, let's see if I can crop this. That's better. Wow, that looks good too. Yeah. Okay. I really like, now this is much better work with the line, with the dry brush. Is it a little bit busy in there? I don't know, but because the interest has been created, I think you get away with a lot more busyness. It's how you do it. It's like everything else. It's not what you do most of the time. It's how you do it. I think the sky is a little bit busy. Let me just start on that because I want to get to the bits I really like in this. Let's get the sort of perhaps the bits I feel I need to say something about done first. I think the sky's probably been just a little overworked. Having said that, I think you're only, you know, another painting away from getting skies to work beautifully, because it's borderline sort of overworked. It's I see a lot of brushwork up there, and if you inclined to do that, and there's nothing wrong with moving the brush around once you get quite established with watercolor, to actually playing around with the skies for a long time. But you've got to realize, if you're going to do that, you've got to know the drying time of that area of paper and the amount of paint that you're using, because the minute things start drying out, you will get this effect of it looking overworked. If you can keep it wet, working wet into wet for as long as possible, you can achieve, you can have both the cake and eat it, if you like. You know, you keep flooding the area with strong paint and water, and you can move the brush around a lot. But I would still hold on to the fact that even in that situation, if you're using the point of a brush a lot, it doesn't take much for it to dry out and suddenly to look overworked. So yeah, so okay, it's effective. I certainly like the light at the bottom of the sky, but I want to get onto this lighthouse in the building. I mean it's great. I just love the scratchiness of the line. There's such a difference between a broken line and an unbroken line. This is 99% broken line, which is what it should be. And I certainly mean this in a good way. There's some crudity, there's some crudeness to this line work and these marks, but that's what gives it the character. The foreground is played off beautifully in terms of light. There's some lifting out here. Looks like you've used brush or sponge or bit of tissue into damp paper. I love that. Fantastic. I think it's a really good painting. Yeah, good work. And I was saying this about, it might have been Ellie's I was saying this about, but yes, you have got a little bit of a village going on there rather than a single building. But I think it's still sparse enough to sort of give us an indication that it does all belong together. Yeah, very good, Ron. Okay. Yes, beautiful colours. Okay, we have Sarah's next here. And again, this is a beautifully light painting. Good playoff. I like the sky. Quite abstract, but just the right amount of, just enough sort of hinted upon hard edges. But plenty of soft as we'd expect it to be. You'd expect there to be. I think the building is excellent. I think the building is really good. Foreground is good. It's reading well. You could have perhaps had slightly less segmentation in the foreground. But in a way, perhaps it's what's giving this painting its character, its sense of style. I'm looking at this. So I'm just looking at, some of these areas. No, I think it's a grower. I think the more you look at this, the more appealing it is. We know that this is the vertical wall in front of the building, so it's good. I'd say that what I see in this is that the attention and observation you've made of the photo for what's actually going on in the scene, and it's not certainly it's not been this is the way Howard did this bit, this is the way Howard did that bit. This is your interpretation of the photo. I can see the photo. I can see the scene in this painting from the photo, but it's not. It is in no way a photographic representation. I really like this. I think this is a really good painting. Yeah. And I'm going to make one small remark, and I think it's probably these chimneys, whatever they are, and it was difficult to see what they were from the photo. They were such small objects, but I think we could make less of those, but that's a small thing. You could probably take a small one of these synthetic brushes with a bit of water on, and just work away at those, agitate them with a little bit of water in a small synthetic brush, and with a tissue just lift them off a little bit. I think it would really make a difference. It's a really good painting. I like that a lot. Yeah, I like paintings that grow on me, and that certainly is. Right, good, excellent. Shirley, the light here is lovely. Just again, it's an interpretation, isn't it, of the photo itself, because we've changed the shape of the lighthouse a little bit, but it's effective. It's good, and that is a good building. That's just enough information to tell us that that chunk of a building there all belongs as the same unit, despite its varying little sort of cells and shapes. It is the same building. The sky is excellent. The sky is absolutely excellent. And whatever the light here is, if it's light on the ground, it's effective. If it's just a light wall, you got to be a little bit careful, I think. If that is the wall in front of the building, then you might want to sort of run a bit of a shadowy area across that. But I'd rather read that as light on the ground itself. So a burst of light. It's almost as though it's late afternoon sunlight coming from left to right here. Wonderful textures here in the foreground. Absolutely wonderful. Whatever you've been doing here, scraping out with a card or whatever it is you've been doing, I think you should I think you should call that in. It's use it again repeatedly in your work in landscapes. Whatever you're doing with that card in your hand is excellent work. Looking at the scale of things, I think it's all in proportion. And I think those tones are good. As I say, I mean, whatever that light area is, it doesn't really matter because the painting is working. It works. The person who's likely to see this painting is not going to have access to the photo, probably won't even know where it is. You know, we all know that it's the Isle of Skye in Scotland in the UK, but what's more important is it makes this painting work. And I'm a huge advocate of doing whatever it takes to make a painting work. I will bend the rules wholesale as long as by the end of the painting it's attractive and it works, it's in balance. And you can safely say that about this painting. I'll probably say the same here as to those little chimneys. You might want to soften them off a little bit, those little chimney tops back there. Just play them down a little bit, not too much, because in your painting it's slightly different. They do a different job in your painting. Yeah, I think compared to what I was saying a moment ago about, I think it was Sarah's. I think they're probably okay in this painting. They work. They work. Okay. Yeah. Well done, Shirley. Okay, and we have Suzanne's. Now this is a very confident-looking painting again. Good sky. Really good sky. A nice balance between soft and hard edges. As I'd expect, mostly soft edges for the sky with a little bit of hard edge hinted upon in places, particularly in the focal point territory here. And it is a nice playoff of light and dark. Building, once again, I think is just the right amount of information for this. And the balance of texture and soft works well also. So it's good balance, really, really good balance. You know, I can clearly pick up on what the foreground is about. There's this sort of rolling sort of vegetation, grassland, bit of rocky outcrop popping up. Yeah, I think there's a good balance of shapes, tonal values, warm and cool. And there's a good example of that light across the top of the wall there, which is where we started, I think, with might have been Bob's or whose did we bring this upon? But if you're going to use lines around the tops of things, you must also use white line. So, and just here, I hope you can see what it is I'm pointing at. Let me just so let me just grab this pen. So Although Suzanne has used a dark line in areas over here, she's also incorporated or included white paper lines. So she's left slithers of white line alongside those dark lines. So that's and particularly down here on top of the wall. That's exactly what I was talking about earlier. If you're going to use dark lines, dry brush mark, you've got to couple those with white paper lines. I mean, sometimes at the end of my paintings I will pick up a rigger brush, and if I haven't retained this lovely white line near my dark lines, then I'll simply put them in with a white gouache line. That's a very good example. Very good painting. Some examples of exactly what I was talking about. Well done, Suzanne. Like this shape over here too. Like that little play off over here of how that's broken. Just breaks in, leans back into the painting there like that. I mean, you've got to be a little bit careful. I mean, I've sometimes sort of still do it myself and it's just fall out of your painting on the side, but I think you've done enough there. It doesn't take much, fortunately. I think you've done enough there. That, subtle as it may seem, but that little line there, whoops, lost my pen again, it doesn't stay. Yeah, that little line there is just enough to stop us slipping out of the painting there. Yeah, very good work. I like that a lot. Well done, Suzanne. That rounds it up for this critique, folks. So thanks for participating, and I look forward to our next session.